What's going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. My name is Miko, and I am joined by some very special guests. If you guys have never seen these guys before, this is going to be a really good video for you guys to actually get introduced. This is Jason and Jacob from the Talking Grit podcast. I've been blessed and fortunate to be able to, appear on their podcast a couple times. And with Morgan, kind of being out due to, I'm going to call it paternity leave, because I don't know if we technically have that at Pride of Detroit, but that's essentially what's going on. Morgan's taking some time to be a parent, to be a dad for the first time. And first and foremost, we obviously wish him nothing but the best, him and his wife, in welcoming their daughter into the world. But this has offered the opportunity for Jason and Jacob to kind of come on. And like I said, we had said, or at least I said before we started recording, I had promised you guys a collab months ago. And obviously the off season has been hectic. The regular season was hectic, but we finally have this opportunity. So Jason, Jacob, welcome to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. It's really glad to have you guys here.
Thanks for having us on, man. I'm glad this is finally happening.
Happy to be here. And happy
absolutely.
that Jason didn't have to stalk you and send you, ridiculous amount of messages to get you.
Honestly, Jason, if you had done that, this probably would have happened sooner, because I would have just been like, let me go ahead and get something on the books. But I appreciate you, being patient with me and jumping at the opportunity to kind of get on here, talk some training camp. We're about a good month out from training camp officially kicking off. But first and foremost, before we get into that topic, for those who are not familiar with the Talking Grit podcast, whether Jacob, Jason, whoever wants to kind of kick it off, could you kind of just, give the audience just a little bit of a backstory on how you guys started and how long you guys have kind of been doing this whole thing?
Yeah, we are a little over a year in now. We've told this story before on Pride of Detroit, but just the brief story is Pride of Detroit, Jeremy, they all lost their podcast for a little bit. I've been listening to this podcast for years, so it was, a big deal to me, and I needed to have someone to talk Lions with, and Jacob and I worked together. We decided to start the podcast, and it's been we've got to meet awesome people like you, Miko, which I've been listening to you for a long time too, so it was awesome for you to be on our podcast, like you mentioned before. And we've gotten to do a lot of really cool things with this podcast, meet a lot of cool people, experience things that we've never experienced before. And yeah, we're super excited to be here.
Yeah, that's awesome. And again, I'm really grateful for the fact that you guys were able to come on here. I remember when Jeremy and Ryan and Eric did the same thing for me when I first was starting out trying to get into, creating a YouTube channel, creating a podcast. So it's cool to be able to pay that forward to really good guys who are knowledgeable about the game of football, and I think this is nothing but great stuff for Lions fans going forward. So if you guys haven't had a chance to check out Talking Grit, I'm going to make sure I link their podcast. You guys also have a YouTube channel? I can't remember.
Yeah, exactly. We do. We've started doing live podcasts earlier this off season, and yeah, we'll put up, right now it's kind of a slow time, but we'll put up videos closer to getting into the season.
Okay, so yeah, I'll make sure to link all of the different platforms that you guys can kind of consume their content in the description of this video. Definitely check them out. Like I said, it's been awesome for me to be able to be on some of your guys' podcasts. I know Jeremy has been on, Morgan's been on, and like I said, you guys do an amazing job. So with that said, let's jump into the meat and potatoes of today's video, which is going to be, like I said, taking that look and ahead, should I say, to training camp. And I thought something that would be really cool to do is, with getting ready for training camp, let's break down the players that we are most excited to look forward to, as well as players that we think are really going to stand out once training camp kicks off. Training camp is a completely different beast than OTAs, than mini camp and things like that. We finally get pads, the intensity starts to ratchet up, and everything starts to really build, I think, in my opinion, to the regular season. So what we're going to do in this video, we have each selected 3 players that we are going to highlight. We have each chosen a starter, a role player / rookie that we're choosing to highlight, and then who we consider to be a sleeper that we think is going to have an impressive training camp. So with that said, Jacob, I'm going to start with you. If you want to go ahead and kick us off with who you are most excited to see, your starter that you're most excited to see once training camp kind of kicks off.
Yeah, so the starter that I chose, the one I'm looking at, is going to be Jameson Williams. And it's hard for me to call JMO a breakout candidate just because of the season that he had last year. But if John Morton and Dan Campbell can say it, then I guess I'm going to go with it too. He got to see JMO at training camp in person last year. Obviously, JMO is a fan favorite, super competitive even in training camp, positive vibes. Just all around, it was really cool to see him last year, and you could tell that he kind of took that next step last season. So to think that it's possibly going to get even better is crazy. When he's coming back, he's stronger, a little bit smarter, he's got everything down. It's all coming together for him. And I mean, everything's pointing to him having a huge season. And I'm just really interested to see how that looks in training camp right away.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement with you. We've heard so many good things about JMO so far throughout the offseason. Like you said, whether it's the coaching staff or the players talking about him coming back looking bigger, stronger, obviously still has that same speed, still has that game breaking ability there. But Jason, like, I definitely can understand why, a lot of fans are excited to see him, because one of the things that, even though JMO seems to have had a big, season last year, it does still feel like he's just scratching the surface, right?
That's the thing, man. He's averaging an explosive play every time he catches the ball, which, so if we can get him the ball more, there just it's going to open up the offense more. And yeah, it just seems like like you said, scratching the surface is right where we're at with JMO. And he could become, I hate to see what's going to happen to this offense if he becomes even more explosive than last year, because this offense was already awesome. And now, we could, add something even greater to this team.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement there. But with that said, you have a player that's also on the offensive side of the football that is not necessarily a breakout candidate, but is someone that I think we would love to see have an even stronger start to the season than he did last year, right?
Yeah, that's why I'm going to pick Sam LaPorta. If you ask a lot of Lions fans, especially during the middle of the part of the season last year, they were probably disappointed in like his overall numbers that Sam LaPorta was putting up, right? And I remember his rookie campaign, training camp, everybody mentioned him. And last year we found out that he is dealing with an injury, and that probably like caused him to tail off at the beginning of the season. But what's got me excited about Sam LaPorta is if you look at his last 5 games, his average targets went up to 7.8 per game. He was averaging only 3 in the first 5 games of the season. He was building up to something. But we were all kind of disappointed in maybe the overall stats of his overall stats. He didn't have as many yards, as many catches. His targets were all down. They were all pointed up towards the end of last season. And so I'm expecting when Eric and Jeremy do their day by day training camp announcements, LaPorta is going to be the guy that they're talking.
Yeah, I can definitely see that definitely being the case, Jacob. When I look at Sam LaPorta, it is so easy to forget that he was dealing with those injuries early in camp, right? We were so used to seeing him dominate that I think things like that, if they're not like, big hampering injuries, they kind of go under the radar. But I think it is safe to expect him to start this upcoming season off to a much hotter start, right?
Definitely. I mean, week 1, it seemed like, we kind of forgot about the injury and everything. He was doing pretty well in week 1, and then he kind of just was not as involved. Obviously, there's a lot of mouths to feed. Those were some closer games that we had. And yeah, as the season went on, he definitely still showed flashes, showed what he did during the rookie season and what we hope to see more next year. Just, the injury thing happened. Like I said, a lot of mouths to feed. There's a lot, going on with the offense. I mean, the Cowboys game, he had 1 catch, but that catch was that 50-yard touchdown on the flea flicker. So, I mean, he's definitely an impact player.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you highlighted Jameson Williams, obviously, you also talk about Jahmyr Gibbs, you talk about Amon-Ra St. Brown, you talk about David Montgomery. While there are so many mouths to feed, with us already hearing that maybe Ja and JMO may be bigger, emphasis in the offense, that could open up more opportunities for Sam. And so that is someone I would definitely be keeping an eye on once training camp kicks off as well. While you both, though, went to the offensive side, I guess I only picked the only defensive player that I'm going to be keeping an eye on. And I think it's the one that everybody's going to be most excited to see and is going to have circled when, whether it's fans being at training camp or like you were saying, Jason, when Jeremy and Eric have their observations roll out. And that's Aiden Hutchinson. Obviously, we know Aiden was off to a phenomenal start to last season. 7.5 sacks in 5 games, was definitely trending towards, I think it's fairly safe to say that he was the front runner for Defensive Player of the Year at the point in the time that he got hurt. Definitely was probably in line to get his first All-Pro bid. But now he's coming back from that leg injury, and that is the person that I have like at the top of my list with a star next to him of the person that I want to see, if I'm able to attend training camp, it's the person I'm going to be having my eyes glued to when reading any type of observations. It's how much does he look like his old self, right? Is he still having those competitive battles with Penei Sewell and showing that level of dominance that had him really trending towards being possibly the best pass rusher in the NFC?
What's interesting, Miko, is I think that we've grown so accustomed to Hutch just showing out at training camp and during the season. He's the same thing with Amon Ra. They just kind of get looked over and they don't get mentioned because we just assume greatness from them. And but with his injury, that's going to be, you're exactly right. It's going to be a focal point. We're going to want to hear, okay, does Hutch look like his old self? Is he dominating? How's he looking? So I think it's a great pick.
You know, there was that whole, could he play in the Super Bowl? Is he going to be recovered in time? Then they released that video, and he was not running very fluidly in that first one that they released. So then it was kind of apparent, like, okay, yeah, he probably would not have played in the Super Bowl. They're still still posting training videos and everything. He looks like he's moving quicker. You're right. That's, all eyes are going to be on him. And, every time he hits the ground, I think everyone's going to be holding their breath for a little bit. Like, please get up, please, please go back to at least what you were doing last year, which is a shame because you want him to take that next level up. And he's definitely been working at it. And I hope that's what we see. But you at least want him to be able to get back to game speed, by the time the season starts. So it's a very important training camp for him.
Absolutely. Speaking of players that kind of hit the ground running last year, I want to kind of transition over into our role players and rookies. And I'll kick this one off starting with a player that I thought hit the ground running very well last year after having so many injuries and not really being sure if he was ever going to be able to have the career that the Lions were hoping for when they drafted him. I'm going to go with Levi Onwuzurike. I thought Levi played absolutely phenomenal. I don't think the stat sheet really shows exactly how impactful he was, but you consider the fact that after Hutch went down, after Aleem went down, Levi was the guy that was really leading the charge in terms of pressures on the team. And he was really starting to show that versatility of being able to play the 3-tech, being able to play big edge. And the fact that the Lions were able to retain him on a 1-year deal at the cost that they were able to retain him at, I have all eyes on Levi because I think whether it's a big season for him that allows him to stay in Detroit or a big season for him that allows him to get paid elsewhere, I think this training camp could really be a huge jumping off point for him at this point. What do you think, Jason?
I'm going to be interested to see where they got him lining up, like in training camp, just initially. Because, I mean, he's a guy, like you said, that can play all over. And with the injury to Aleem, it's going to be like, are they going to have him or is Tyleek going to be there? And is Levi playing the edge? Or, are they going to have Davenport? That Levi, you hit the nail on the head. Getting him for the contract we got him for, probably the most underrated signing of the offseason, in my opinion. And it'll be interesting. I'll be interested where he lines up. What about you, Jacob?
Yeah, the contract thing still makes no sense to me. We talked about that right away on our podcast. I just don't understand how he wasn't able, it seems like he wanted to come back to Detroit. He wanted to take this contract, possibly, the chance to play for a Super Bowl, but the chance to earn a bigger contract, like you said, Miko, maybe elsewhere, just to show what he's got. Shocking to me that he didn't get bigger offers, but maybe he did and he just didn't want to take them. But yeah, definitely. It was actually surprising for me to see how they used him last year and moved him outside on the edge more. And you're right. He played up to it. And, for somebody with the medical history and the back injury and everything, and for all the injuries that we had last year, for Levi to be able to stay healthy, and play all the time, like that was awesome.
I'm in full agreement with you. Like, it was good to see. It was like we finally got that glimpse of what made Brad talk about, all those years ago, like why he was tempted to trade up for Levi. And it's like, it's this level of performance. It's this level of versatility. And I specifically look back at like the beginning of that season when the entire D-line was healthy. That's when Levi looked at his best. Like, Hutch was getting a lot of those sacks, obviously, but Levi was like right there on his heels, being able to create pressure as well. So that's someone that I know for me personally that I'm really going to be focused in on. Jason, who is the role player that you have your eyes on?
Yeah, so we went rookie / role player. I'm going with a 7th round pick here. I'm going with Dan Jackson. And am I expecting him to come in and fight for starter rep? No, he's not that type of player. But I just want to hear how he's looking in training camp because number one, there is a spot in this roster for a safety. He could possibly be safety number 4 in my opinion, and he might even be in the leading candidate right now because you got your 2 starters, Kirby Bryant, and then I would say Avonte Maddox is probably safety number 3 right now is how I'm reading it. So that spot is wide open because your other candidates in there were undrafted free agents from last year. You have Maurice Norris and Lawrence Strickland, and then you have Ian Kennelly, undrafted free agent on the roster right now. So I'm not expecting him to like light things up, but he is a guy that can play in the run game. He can play special teams right now. And if you listen to Dave Phipp talk earlier this year, the NFL doesn't develop players. They really don't.
Mm-hmm.
you have only so many roster spots, but he said there is a caveat when you can develop a player, and that's a guy like what Dan Jackson could do. If he could play special teams right now, we're looking at safety in like 2 or 3 years for this guy. He's a very smart player, so I look for him to catch on to things really quick, and they will, the Lions are smart. They will put him in a position to succeed. So I'm excited to hear about Dan Jackson. Walk on at Georgia. He's got to walk onto this team, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the things that like kind of endears me to Dan Jackson is like in terms of thinking what he could do long term on this roster is he was that walk on and he developed year after year after year until he finally got his opportunity to be a full-time starter at safety. And I think like you're saying, his ability to play special teams and at least contribute there first as he continues to learn the mental part of safety at the NFL level could do wonders for him. And the fact that he has two, high level safeties in front of him and Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph can do nothing but other like more great things for him in terms of his development long term to potentially at least maybe move up to being safety 3 for this team in maybe 1 to 2 years. What do you think, Jacob?
Yeah, no, that's actually something interesting to me too, because this guy's a fighter, 7th round pick. His roster spot's not guaranteed, but this guy's going to come in with everything that he's got. Especially, this is somebody that you want to see in the preseason too, right? You want to see how they use him in training camp. You want to see how the special teams correlates, but you want to see game action. You want to see, can he keep up? What do we have in this guy?
Yeah,
I don't doubt his, his ability to compete, but is the talent and everything there? Is he going to be able to stick around?
Yeah, and I think that was something that Morgan and I kind of dove into when we were doing the film study on him is that like in terms of like defending the run, being able to play downhill, that aspect of his game he has in spades. It's the other part of playing safety when you're talking about being able to cover deep third, maybe even being single high and things like that. Those are the areas that he still needs to develop in. And I think, again, you don't have to rush that because you have two, in my mind, at least all pro caliber safeties in Branch and Kirby. And then Avonte Maddox, like you said, Jason, is right there in the wings to be that safety 3 as well. So with that said, Jacob, how about you kick us off with your role player?
Yeah, so mine is I guess kind of somebody that was a red shirt last year, if you want to call that. I went with Ennis Rakestraw. So 2nd round pick last year, somebody who, potentially was going to be starting at nickel. He had the injury happen, and I mean, he kind of fought with that pretty much all year. He didn't really get a lot of meaningful snaps on defense. He was playing mostly special teams, but this is somebody else, in person when we saw in training camp, he was competing and he looked really good. And, now Deshae Townsend already kind of said, he's going to go out there, he's going to compete on the outside. So they've pretty much already laid it out. Amik's going to be playing nickel. Avonte Maddox could also be playing nickel, but Ennis is going to have to compete for a spot on the outside. And I'm interested to see how he looks during training camp and see how this competition goes, because obviously you've got Terrion, you've got DJ Reed. There's not a starting spot really there. I mean, so how is he going to look in training camp? How is he going to stay focused? How is he going to look in the preseason games? And I mean, if this is going to be his opportunities on special teams and being a role player and just coming in on certain packages, I definitely think that he's capable, of starting. So that's somebody that I'm really interested to see in training camp and see how he looks, especially just coming back from the injury as well. Get him a full training camp and again, hopefully he stays healthy.
Yeah, I'm excited because you need depth at cornerback, right? And you're going to see CB3, you're going to see CB4 at some point this year. So I want to see how he looks right away. I am interested that they took nickel off his plate. They basically are going to push him right to the outside corner. So I like that for a fact that he's got something he's going to focus on as opposed to splitting his duties between nickel and outside corner. They're going to put him right at outside and they have confidence in him doing it. So I'm with Jacob. I'm excited to see how Ennis looks.
Yeah, I'm right there with both of you. I would love to see him be a lot more involved in training camp this year, obviously not having to deal with injuries and things like that. And it's going to be interesting to see, like you said, Jacob, like it's not like there's a starter spot available. And unless they're really unsure about Terrion, like Ennis is going to have to, really play to a really high level to even, supplant Terrion to get that starting spot. But even then, the way that this defense has typically run, and obviously it's going to be a little different under Kelvin Shepherd, they do like to play their best guys. They do like to match up and play guys in different capacities. So maybe that is a situation where Ennis isn't necessarily a starter, but depending on the matchup, depending on how, what opposing offense they're running up against, they may deploy him a little bit more in a different way just to make sure that they have the best coverage guys out there to be able to, handle a specific, whether it's a passing attack or even a rushing attack, because we do know he's a very physical corner and is not afraid to come downhill and, be able to play in the run game as well.
Absolutely.
All right, let's move over to the last category we have here, and that is sleepers. So Jacob, I'm gonna have you kick us off here with your sleeper going into training camp.
All right, my sleeper, I'm going with the rookie, going with the 5th round pick, and I'm saying Miles Frazier is going to be my sleeper. I think he's going to turn some heads during training camp. Before Frank retired, we kind of had the whole conversation like where, how are we now have an abundance of guards. Now we don't really have that anymore because the assumption is that Tate Ratledge is going to be sliding over and playing center. Maybe that's Graham. We'll see who, actually gets snaps at that. But, I think that Miles Frazier is at least going to warrant a conversation about can he start at guard, or is he going to show enough that maybe, we're talking when he takes over at guard and not if. So that's somebody I'm really looking forward to in training camp. I mean, he's a tough offensive lineman. He's kind of similar to Frank in that, he just goes to work, doesn't talk a whole lot, just lets the product on the field speak for itself. There's no pressure for him, right? He's a 5th round pick, so he's just coming in here to compete.
Yeah, he's my wild card in that offensive line room where I could easily see him, and I say easily in the sense that if he plays at a really high level, that he could be one of the guys that starts at either left or right. Like I think he played that well at LSU to where like you see the athleticism, you see his comfortability at playing guard. The only thing that I think that he still needs to develop on is like just, again, contact at the point of attack, being able to generate more power and be able to generate more push. But that doesn't mean that if he gets into camp and he's handling guys like Tyleik Williams, if he's handling guys like Levi or DJ Reader, that the Lions wouldn't be afraid to kind of push him to that starting spot, right, Jason?
Yeah, I do. It's like Jacob said, it's the abundance of riches, right? At the offensive line, then Frank had to do what he had to do and kind of put a little spin on it. But I knew that Jacob was going to pick my Frazier. Like when you sent me what we're going to talk about this show, I knew Jacob was going to pick that. So I didn't even bother picking him. But I am excited too, just to see where he lines up on this offensive line. He could play anywhere. And so he's going to be a nice reserve even if he's not a starter, because if someone gets injured anywhere across the line, I think that he could take some snaps.
Yeah, absolutely. With that said, Jason, why don't you kick us off with your sleeper? Because I think this one is a very interesting one considering just the versatility that he presents as a player.
I'm channeling my inner Eric Schlitt here and doing Sione Vaki. He's obviously special teamer. I know I picked Dan Jackson, so apparently I got affinity for special teams, but I like how he looked in the preseason last year. I really think that he showed some flashes, and I would like, with 4 preseason games, we're going to be able to see him on the field a little bit more, and hopefully he's just a lot more comfortable at the running back position. It was a brand new position for him, so I know he's got to get more reps at that position, but I'm excited. We all know what he can do at special teams. He is probably our best special teams player right now. We've or way up there, and I'll be excited to see what he can do at running back.
Yeah, I feel like as fans, we're like going into training camp, we're always wondering which running back is going to supplant Craig Reynolds for that RB3 spot. Sione Vaki for me is like the most likely, just because, like you said, Jason, like seeing him on the field, you realize like he at least has the knack, he has the juice, he has the fluidity to play running back. But I mean, at the end of the day, Jacob, like Craig Reynolds has been kind of cemented the last few years as RB3. So Vaki's probably going to need a pretty impressive camp.
You're right. I mean, it is like every year you kind of feel like, is Craig Reynolds going to make it or is somebody else going to show out? And this is another thing where if you're talking about practice reps with the starters, that's just not happening. You've got Gibbs, you've got Demo. So he's not going to get a whole lot of work in with the starters, and like that, he's going to have to show out in these preseason games. And just the small flashes that we've seen, he definitely looks capable. So it's definitely an interesting player. It's a good pick by Jason there. But I don't know. I mean, if I'm betting right now, I guess, it's just weird. I guess I would say that I think that he makes it over Craig Reynolds. If you're only going to keep one, I think that he would surpass him. But Craig is resilient, man. He's been around for so long. Craig's not going down without a fight. We all know that.
No, you need to keep Craig. I mean, we need to keep Craig, but I'm hoping by the end of the season, Vaki has shown enough that he is up, RB3. So it might not start out the season that way, but
let's say that he is RB3 though. How many carries do you want RB3 getting, or do you see the running back 3 getting?
It does.
Ideally, there's no injuries. Like running back 3 is
Right. But running back, we've already seen Demo get injured last year. I'm not saying that's going to
Hmm.
happen again this year, but I like the versatility that Vaki gives us as far as catching the football that I think that Craig cannot offer that as much. Now, Craig can run and be dependable, but I think Vaki gives a little wild card with his hands.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know if this will be a battle between one of them making the roster and not, right? Because like you said, Jason, Vaki has that special teams versatility. So even if they don't necessarily look at him first and foremost as a running back, if they're just like, hey, this is somebody that we can have out there on punt return, kick return types of situations, he will at least have a spot on that 53-man roster. But I do like what you said there about Vaki's versatility in the passing game, because I do think that is the thing that separates him and Craig. While Craig can be effective in the passing game, it is different when Vaki gets the ball in his hands and he's able to go out there and run routes and things like that. So with that said, we'll finish it off with my sleeper pick. I kind of just realized that I pretty much went all defense on my picks, and that's actually going to be Derrick Barnes. I know for some people that might not be much of a sleeper, but I feel like we haven't talked a ton about Derrick Barnes since he re-signed. Like, we talked about him for that hot second and how great that is, but ever since then, I think people have really kind of forgotten about the impact that he has when it comes to this defense. And it goes beyond just the fact that he's a Sam. Like, this defense operates very differently when he's able to be out there, especially when you have him, Anzalone, and Jack Campbell, and the fact that they can all be fairly versatile and move around. I think we're going to see a much improved defense in training camp and definitely in the regular season with Derrick Barnes being fully healthy.
Yep, I'm right with you. I had mentioned earlier about Sam LaPorta showing out 2 years ago in camp. Derrick Barnes was starting to just show that in the camp where he was starting to get mentioned every time after every practice. Like, Derrick Barnes looks pretty good. He might make a mistake here or there. And then, he had a pretty good season. And then last year, unfortunately, it just was cut short. And we've kind of all for our memories are short as Lions fans. They really are.
Mm-hmm.
We forget how impactful he is going to be on this defense. And I'm with you, Miko. I'm excited to see how he looks in camp.
Definitely. He just 3 games last year. Really, just that was the story of the season, right? Just defensive injuries, just hampering everything. He was playing really well too, like before he went down. So the defense looks completely different with him out there. And that's definitely somebody else that you're hoping gets right back up to speed and just continues doing what he was doing before.
And I think that was the other thing too, is like we were starting to see like Barnes really thrive in that role. It wasn't just the fact that he was on the field, like he was very much like you could see the vision of why the Lions like to have a Sam linebacker. And so I continue to think about like I still think, and I think a lot of Lions fans believe that this is the linebacker tandem like going forward if the Lions decide to walk away from Alex Anzalone at any given point. But like you can see that Derrick Barnes has it all. He can definitely play in the middle and be like, that second middle linebacker if you need him to, but he has such great ability when it comes down to defending the run and setting the edge, as well as getting to the quarterback. And I think, like you said, Jacob, it was only 3 games, but you were starting to see that ability really kind of come through and realize like this offers a completely different layer to this defense that they just weren't able to have and that they were searching for back when they had James Houston and back when they were trying to figure out like, okay, how do we get this additional linebacker on the field?
Yes.
One thing that I think that we also should mention is Shep, right? Shep was his linebackers coach, and now he's moved up. And Barnes played a unique position on this defense. Now, had we went a totally different way with a different defensive coordinator, I don't know if we're as excited about Barnes being in this position. I mean, I think Barnes is a good player, but it was the Sam position. The way the Lions play it is very unique. So, but Shep will know exactly how to put him in the right place to succeed. So, I think Shep being back and being brought up as defensive coordinator is going to make your pick even better, Miko.
Yeah, I'm excited to see this entire linebacking core. Like with Shep kind of leading the charge. Obviously, when Aaron Glenn was here, he put a lot of emphasis on that secondary. I'm interested to see if things shift a little bit in terms of Shep putting a lot more responsibility on his linebackers. We've already heard a little bit about that in terms of like the pressure or the responsibility that he's putting on Jack Campbell early in OTAs and things like that. So it's going to be interesting to see if Jack is taking on more responsibility as the signal caller and things like that, wearing the green dot, how much more responsibility that frees up for Derrick Barnes to really go out there and play a little bit looser.
Be all over the field.
Yes, that's
Absolutely.
right. Hopefully he's getting after the quarterback too at some point. I
Yeah.
want to see him develop that part of his game.
Well, and I think that would go a huge way in like calming some of the minds of fans who are really still like panicking about how are the Lions going to generate pressure, how are they going to get to the quarterback. If you have someone like Derrick Barnes that can rush from that second level of the defense, or even be on the edge opposite an Aiden Hutchinson, or just outside of Aiden Hutchinson, or just outside of Marcus Davenport, you can get much more creative when it comes down to those types of things.
And the people clamoring for edge have the short memory that we talk about with Derrick Barnes, have it with how we looked with Hutch on the edge. He's going to make it look way better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So with all that said, guys, those are the players that we are looking forward to most when it comes down to training camp. Just to kind of run through the list again, for me, it was Aiden Hutchinson, Levi Onwuzurike, and Derrick Barnes. Jason had Sam LaPorta, Sione Vaki, and Dan Jackson. And then Jacob had Jameson Williams, Ennis Rakestraw, and Miles Frazier. So those are the players that we're excited for. We would love to hear from you guys in the comments section below. Who are you most excited to see once training camp kicks off? Who do you think is going to have an impressive training camp? And like always, if you guys are looking for more additional Lions content, you can always check out PrideOfDetroit.com. There are new articles being uploaded over there. We are currently doing our Lions player profile series. So again, certain players are being singled out, and the guys are doing a really good job of creating content and talking about what to look forward for certain players going into the season. And like I said at the top of this video, if you guys haven't had a chance to check out Talking Grit, I highly encourage you guys to do so. Like I said, the link will be in the description to be able to check out their podcast, as well as a link to their YouTube channel as well. Definitely show these guys some love, because like I said, they are doing an amazing job with the content that they're putting out. But with all that said, I'm Miko. He's Jason. He's Jacob. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch, and we'll see you guys in the next one.